Hi there. This is Rosie Aiello with the Love is Kind Network. I am the CEO and founder of the Love is Kind Network, and I manage the Love is Kind movement Facebook page and the Love is Kind Women's Circle group. So I invite you to join the group. I am on a global mission to impact 100 million women who have been impacted by domestic violence and help the world change by helping them learn to believe that they deserve to be treated with kindness. So, my mission is to create kinder, intimate relationships, kinder families, kinder communities, and a kinder world. And that is the path to a win win. Right now, we are not probably feeling so much kindness in the world. At least some groups are not feeling that kindness. And we can't win when someone doesn't feel kindness. So, I am a speaker, I'm an international award winning entrepreneur, and I invite you today to join me and to stay on to this dynamic conversation about injustice, your voice, and trauma. It is an amazing time in this world, an absolutely amazing time. And I hope it gives us the opportunity to really look at ourselves. So I want to be sharing with you some concepts that maybe you know about, maybe you don't, but still, this is the time for self-reflection. And in the United States, if you're outside the United States, I'm sure you have heard there's quite a bit of unrest about, on the topic of racism, specifically against Blacks or African Americans. And it is a travesty that's happening in today's world, an absolute travesty that we have to continue these conversations. And while I am not of African American heritage, I know to some degree what it's like to have your voice squelched. I lived in an abusive relationship for 25 years where I couldn't I couldn't say what I wanted. I couldn't do what I wanted. I had to always look over my shoulder. I was always afraid of something happening. I was on hyper alert. I was in a state of fear for most of those 25 years, a state of fear. So when you're in that state of fear, it puts you in a state of trauma when you don't even realize it. So I experienced that for 25-ish years, maybe a little bit more actually. 25 years of my life experiencing losing my rights being diminished. I listened to Oprah. She was having a dialogue about the injustice. And in that, she shared back in, I think it was 1986, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but she did an experiment with her audience. And she divided them into brown eyes and blue eyes. And she had the blue eyes wait longer than the brown eyes. And then the blue eyes, people had to sit in the back of the room. And at the end of her show, a woman who had blue eyes stood up and was really upset that, she had been discriminated against. And I thought it was such an amazing thing. And Oprah said, see how you feel after 1 hour of feeling discriminated, 1 hour that you feel like your rights were not met. Me, 25 years or so, African Americans, in this country, lifetimes and generations and generations and generations. And this is what builds on the trauma. And so when people just said, I've had it, just like when I escaped, I had it, I had to get out. People forget. I don't know why other human beings think that somebody being oppressed is going to like it. That is not human nature. Our human nature, our human essence is to feel freedom, to be free. I know what it's like not to be free when you're not in physical chains, but you're in an emotional chains. You are blocked, put down. So imagine for the African Americans, generation after generation after generation, no one is going to accept that. And for us to think that they should is wrong. So many injustices. You think the injustices of based on the American Constitution that all people are created equal. Well, obviously they're not. In so many other groups, there are a lot of injustices in the world, right? Well, we're just going to focus. I'm going to tie these between the domestic violence and African Americans, because my world is domestic violence. This is what I know. I am no expert in the African American community, but I sure can have empathy for them. I sure can understand and offer some degree of compassion for them. So as I compare this, is that when I escaped from my abusive relationship, I was diagnosed with PTSD. So what happens when you have been traumatized, your brain is literally rewired. It's hard to think, it's hard to focus, it's hard to plan. And a lot of people will communicate, will share what they're thinking through anger. That wasn't my method. I was more in the freeze type. I froze. I'm just getting my voice now after all these years. I've been in the United States now for 10 years, back to my home country, back to the United States, 10 years of freedom. Freedom is huge in my vocabulary. Freedom is really, really huge. And can you imagine that one woman, 1 hour discriminated against, 1 hour she felt she didn't have her rights, and how upset she was in 1 hour. Me, 25 years, African Americans. For generation and generation and generation. And if that trauma, because they have all been traumatized, and if that trauma, if they're not able to heal through this trauma, it's going to be just repressed and repressed. So not only are they repressed on the outside by society, they are being repressed by their own trauma within themselves. So it's a double whammy. So this is a time for you to look at your own actions, to examine your own thoughts and your own beliefs. The only way humanity can rise above is to take the step of kindness, to take the step of understanding, to take the step of curiosity, to take the step of compassion. This is how we move forward. And I am proud as an American that we can protest. And yes, the protesters are getting squashed, but they still rise up and use their voice again. So how can you use your voice? And maybe you're afraid to use your voice. Maybe you're not on social media. You don't want to use your voice. But this is what I challenge you. And I challenge myself. This is my partner and I were talking about this. I challenge myself and I challenge you of the private conversations that we are having. It's great to have to show up and to say, hey, I'm all for Black Lives Matter. But what do you say behind the doors? What do you say to your friends? Oh, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but I'm not going to vote for that guy. God, did you see? I was walking down the street and that guy looked at me. It scared me out of my bejeebies. These are the things that we keep getting into our psyche. And this is what directs our individual behavior. Our votes matter. Our actions matter. All of those matter. Everything matters, but it starts with how you think and what you believe. And what you believe is what you have thought over and over and over. And what have you been listening to? If you listen and only focus on taking care of yourself and nobody's more important, and you know, who are those people, you know, just because they have a different color skin. I mean, I had, you know, the pleasure when I lived overseas for, you know, again, almost 25 years. I had the pleasure of meeting people from, I can't even count the number of different countries, and many, many, many from Africa. When people are not oppressed, people are happy. Talk about happy. They're happy. Think about your own lives. Are you being toxic to other people? Are you demeaning others? Or others demeaning you? We can only rise up when we have kindness in our lives. So ask yourself, what can I do? How do I want to show up as a human being? Who do I want to become in this process, in this dialogue? What do I think and say privately to others? And how would I feel if my rights and my voice were squelched? And it doesn't, right, I hear you, Angel. Yes, but it's still, it doesn't even matter whether you consider yourself fully black or you're more white. It's how you feel inside. And this is the thing. Is like, and what injustice means, you know, which I forgot to cover. You know, injustice means that you lose your rights. There's a violation of your rights or the violations of other rights. And injustice, that's sort of the textbook, you know, the definition from the dictionary. But it's your definition. Should you ever be discriminated against for whatever reason? Should you ever be put down, demeaned, controlled? The answer is no. The answer is no. And we have to stand up for our rights in our own relationships. And that's where this all begins. It starts in our relationships within our families. And why kindness is the key. When we have conversations in our families, or we have models that are not healthy, we don't learn how to treat others with kindness. We learn to grow up expecting not to be treated with kindness. And so what happens is that perpetuates itself. That thought perpetuates itself. That behavior perpetuates itself. It goes on and on. So whether it's in a domestic violence situation or in any situation, we are continuing these thoughts and beliefs until things like this happen now, where people are challenging our thoughts and our beliefs. Just like I am challenging everyone, all women, to challenge your relationships with others if they are being toxic to you, or if they are being controlling to you, if they are putting you down, or if they are physically assaulting you, if they're financially abusing you, like I was. No human being wants that. We all want our freedom. Now, not all people are nice. Have you noticed? Right? Not all people are nice. And that's where we need to make those statements that we don't need to be with you. We don't need to support you. We are here to help ourselves, to be a better person, to be a better human being. We are here to help others who are suffering. So if you are suffering, it's your time to reach out and say, I need help. I need help. Help me. And if you are the one putting others down, why? Because what happens with trauma and when you've been traumatized is that unless you have been healed, unless you've done that healing, that trauma continues. It continues in your memory, in your body. It continues. And wounded people wound others. So when you see people acting out in anger, it's because they've been wounded. Because they are dealing in their in the lower part of their brain, the fight or flight in the amygdala part of their brain, that primitive part of their brain, that's where they're still responding out of. Instead of responding in their prefrontal cortex, where they have the thinking and then planning. And this is what is happening. This is why everyone's lashing out. They're not dealing with their rational mind. They're not dealing of how to do this. And this is where you come in, where you come in with a little bit of compassion, not to accept any abuse ever, never to accept the abuse, no matter who it's coming from. It's not acceptable. And so the challenge for those who have been abused, who have been discriminated against, who have been demeaned, belittled, ridiculed, treated less than human. Where do you need your healing? The healing comes only from within. The healing always has to come within. So we have a lot of work to do here. We have to heal ourselves from within, and this is a lifelong project. I have been on my healing journey for 10 years now, and I'm constantly healing. I'm discovering new things about myself. About myself, I'm discovering when I'm being challenged or triggered. What's triggering me? Why am I being triggered? What is my reaction? So yes, we have lots of hurt and pain. Yes, that hurt and pain is valid. No, it is not right ever to act out in violence. And the people who are, just getting involved and inciting more violence, those who are creating divisiveness instead of togetherness, instead of understanding, compassion, collaboration, curiosity. Those are the words that we should be coming from. Instead of the looters who are harming people's businesses, who have worked so hard because they're self-centered, because they're hurting, because they got hurt, so they feel like they have a right to hurt somebody else. And that is how it keeps getting perpetuated. This is our time to rise up. The other day, well, it wasn't the other day, weeks ago, weeks before this uprising and the killing of George Floyd, the death of George Floyd. I'm going to say killing of George Floyd. I'm not a judge and jury, but it looks pretty clear to me. The unnecessary death of George Floyd. Weeks before any of this happened, we have a machine, a DVR, where we can record shows that we want to see in the future. And we'll record a whole bunch, and then we see them when we have time. And I don't watch that much TV, so one movie may take me 3 or 4 nights to actually see the whole thing. And my guy and I, we had recorded the movie Hidden Figures to watch at a later time. And Hidden Figures is about these 3 amazingly, incredibly brilliant African American women who are called computers because they are calculating. They are mathematicians, and they're calculating everything by hand. And I mean, their brilliance is incredible. It's just like mind-boggling. I mean, for and so this movie is about these three African American women who are a critical part of the NASA program, the America's space program, and their key roles in it, and showing and it takes place in the early 1960s. And I would offer you to go look up that movie and watch it and listen to the dialogue. Listen to how these women were discriminated against. There were bathrooms for colored women and for everybody else. And in the show, this woman is put into this group. She is the only woman, and she's African American, and all white men wearing white shirts and black ties. And they all look alike. And here she is, probably the most brilliant in the entire group, and is develops and creates formulas that actually help with the launch of getting our rockets and into orbit and onto the moon. And yet, when she has to go to the bathroom, she has to go to a different building. And that building is a half a mile away, whether it's sunny or rainshine or rainy or sunshine. She has a half a mile going and a half a mile coming back. And so one day her boss is going like, "Where are you going? Why are you gone for so long?" And so he finds out why. And then he knocks down all the colored bathrooms, and they can go to the bathroom anywhere. How do you feel? How do you keep rising up when you're treated that way? It takes a lot of energy. So we all have our parts in this. What is your part going to be? I offer that it starts with kindness. It starts with curiosity. It starts with compassion. It starts with collaboration. And it starts with the private conversations that you're having with your family, with your friends, with your children. How do we want to be as a human being? How do we want to show up as a society? Do we want to live in a society where others are considered better than somebody else? Have you ever had those thoughts? Now is the time to challenge your thoughts. Now is the time to say, yeah, I've been wrong. I need to really start changing my thoughts. And when I change my thoughts, that's what's going to help me change my beliefs and my behaviors. Because in the end, it's our behaviors that matter. It's our behaviors that matter. And we can change. We can make this a better world. We can create more kindness. These are choices that you get to make. What choice are you going to make today? This is Rosie Aiello with the Love is Kind Network. And I wish you a day of freedom, of joy, of kindness, and holding up to what is good for the world. Have a fabulous day.